The moment he realized his wife had left, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. There was no dramatic scene, no shouting match, just the quiet emptiness of an abandoned home and the distant laughter of his two children, who didn't yet understand why Mommy wasn't there. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow, a mixture of disbelief and raw, unfiltered pain. He had trusted her completely, shared dreams, laughter, and countless memories, yet all of it seemed meaningless now, discarded in favor of someone else. It wasn't just the romantic betrayal that stung. It was the sense of being replaced, as if the life they had built together was suddenly a lie. Every photograph on the wall, every shared meal, every inside joke felt like a dagger twisting deeper into his heart. He replayed the events in his mind endlessly, searching for clues, signs he had missed, moments that could have warned him. Could he have done something differently? Was there something about him that made her look elsewhere for happiness? The questions were endless and the answers non-existent. The feeling of abandonment was amplified by the responsibilities that remained. He wasn't just grieving the loss of a partner. He was left to shoulder the care and emotional well-being of two young children who were bewildered, hurt, and confused. Each time he tucked them in at night or tried to explain in the simplest way why Mommy wasn't there, he felt the weight of heartbreak and guilt simultaneously. The betrayal wasn't confined to private pain. It echoed in the smallest aspects of daily life. Watching her laugh with someone else online, hearing from friends about her new life, or even the simple absence of a text or call, each small reminder reignited the ache. Friends offered condolences. Family tried to support. Yet no words could pierce the heavy fog of hurt. Anger mingled with sorrow, creating a turbulent mix that made everyday life feel impossible. It wasn't just infidelity. It was the collapse of trust, the fracturing of family, and the painful realization that someone he had loved unconditionally could act in such a way. Yet, amid the heartbreak, small moments of clarity emerged. The love for his children became a beacon, a reason to rise above the grief. Their laughter, their innocent questions, and even their tears forced him to confront the reality that life continued despite the betrayal. Slowly, a new resilience formed, a determination not to let the betrayal define him entirely. The pain remained, a scar that would never fully fade, but it also sparked a transformation, a careful, painful, but necessary journey toward understanding that betrayal, while devastating, could not strip him of his worth or his role as a loving parent. In the quiet hours, alone with his thoughts, he allowed himself to feel everything: the shock, the sorrow, the anger. But he also began to glimpse the first glimmers of healing. It was a long, torturous road, but the heartbreak, raw and unrelenting, became the foundation for an inner strength he didn't know he possessed. Through the betrayal, he learned the painful, unvarnished truth about love, trust, and resilience, a lesson that would forever shape the way he approached relationships, family, and life itself. Raising two children alone after a spouse leaves is a challenge that touches every part of life, both practically and emotionally. Suddenly, he found himself juggling responsibilities he had once shared, and tasks that had seemed routine now felt monumental. Mornings became a race against the clock, preparing breakfast, packing lunches, and making sure the kids were dressed and ready for school, all while trying to appear calm and collected, even when heartbreak lingered beneath the surface. There was no time to process his own emotions fully because the children relied on him for stability, reassurance, and love. Each day became a balancing act, a constant negotiation between meeting their needs and managing his own grief. Beyond the daily routines, he faced the challenge of being both parents in a household now missing one. He had to become the provider of comfort and guidance in a way that felt natural to him but was entirely new. Explaining why their mother wasn't around required patience, honesty, and sensitivity, knowing that their understanding of adult relationships was still forming. He had to navigate their questions with careful wording, trying to protect them from pain while not shying away from the truth. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every moment of fear or loneliness in his children's eyes reminded him that his role had expanded overnight. The emotional weight of being the sole anchor for their stability was immense, often leaving him exhausted, drained, and questioning whether he was doing enough. At the same time, he had to manage his own emotions, ensuring that his heartbreak didn't overshadow his children's need for security. It was a delicate balancing act, grieving while staying strong, feeling anger and betrayal while showing unconditional love, struggling with his own loneliness while fostering a sense of normalcy. Each day required immense focus, and even small victories like a shared laugh at dinner or a quiet moment reading together became lifelines, reminders that despite the upheaval, life carried on. Bonds could remain strong. The social aspect was equally challenging. Friends and family offered advice and support, but ultimately he had to make parenting decisions alone. From school issues to emotional crises, he faced these challenges without the shared perspective of a partner. The weight of responsibility was constant, a subtle pressure that never fully disappeared, as he knew that the decisions he made would shape not only the immediate well-being of his children, but their long-term understanding of love, family, and trust. Through it all, he discovered reservoirs of patience, resilience, and adaptability he had never known existed. Each day demanded creativity, empathy, and strength. He learned to celebrate small successes and accept setbacks as part of the journey. In the midst of heartbreak and upheaval, the experience of raising his children alone became a transformative process, strengthening his bond with them and proving that even in the face of betrayal, dedication, love, and commitment could provide a stable, nurturing environment. Ultimately, the challenges of single parenting reshaped him, forging a deeper understanding of responsibility, sacrifice, and the profound power of parental love. Time has a way of revealing truths that raw emotion often blinds us to, and in the 6 months following his wife's departure, he experienced a journey that tested him in ways he had never imagined. Initially, the days felt endless and heavy, each one stretching longer than the last as he tried to navigate a life suddenly split in two. The world he had known and the new, uncertain reality forced upon him. The absence of his wife left a void that no amount of distraction could fill. At first, he couldn't imagine how he would survive emotionally, yet gradually, the passage of time brought small, almost imperceptible shifts in perspective. During these months, he discovered the necessity of routine, not just for his children, but for himself. The structure of daily life became a lifeline, helping him to organize not only practical responsibilities, but also his mental and emotional state. He began to notice that each morning he could wake up, prepare breakfast, send the kids to school, and still carve out moments for himself, was a victory, a subtle proof that he could endure. The trauma of betrayal, once overwhelming, became something he could analyze rather than merely feel, allowing him to gradually disentangle his identity from the shock and sorrow. Healing, he realized, was not linear. Some days, grief would wash over him with the force of a storm, triggered by a forgotten anniversary, a social media post, or a quiet moment when the house was empty. Other days, he felt lighter, as if the burden had lifted just enough for him to breathe. These fluctuations were difficult but essential, teaching him that recovery isn't about forgetting the past or erasing the pain, but about learning to exist with it without being consumed. In this process, He also confronted his anger and resentment, recognizing that they, too, were natural responses, but ones that could be channeled productively rather than destructively. Reflection became a powerful tool in this period. He began to consider his relationship not only in terms of loss, but as a series of lessons. What had been taken from him could not define his future, and understanding his own emotional responses helped him regain a sense of control. He explored new routines, hobbies, or small goals that reminded him of his individuality outside the framework of marriage. These moments of self-focus were not selfish. They were essential to restoring balance and ensuring that his children witnessed a father who could remain whole even after profound disruption. By the end of the 6 months, he had developed a clarity that eluded him in the early days. The initial shock had softened into sober understanding. He knew that the betrayal had inflicted deep wounds, yet he also recognized his own strength in navigating them, in creating a stable environment for his children, and in confronting life's challenges without relying on someone who had chosen another path. Time had taught him resilience, patience, and a renewed sense of self-worth. It was within this crucible of experience that he found the foundation for any decision that might come next, including how, or even whether, to respond when his estranged wife returned seeking reconciliation. In these months, he realized that healing and growth were not only possible, but necessary before facing the next chapter of his life. When she returned 6 months later, standing at the doorway with a mix of desperation and regret in her eyes, the world he had painstakingly rebuilt felt suddenly fragile. The shock of seeing her after months of absence brought back a flood of memories, both bitter and sweet, and the emotional storm he had kept under control threatened to spill over. For a moment he simply stared, trying to reconcile the person who had abandoned him and their children with the one now pleading to come back. His mind raced, balancing the instinctive desire to protect his heart and family against the remnants of love that had never fully disappeared. The confrontation was intensely personal. She spoke of mistakes, loneliness, and realizations, trying to paint a picture of growth and remorse. Yet, for him, the words were not enough to erase the months of pain, sleepless nights, and emotional labor he had endured alone. Every promise she made now was weighed against the history of betrayal, forcing him to question her sincerity and the likelihood of history repeating itself. He realized that this moment was not just about forgiveness. It was about choice, trust, and setting boundaries that would protect the life he had worked so hard to stabilize. Emotionally, he oscillated between anger and a reluctant empathy. Anger flared as he remembered the small details of abandonment, the missed birthdays, the lonely nights, the silent house where he had carried the burden alone. Empathy arose when he considered the vulnerability and regret in her voice, the human tendency to seek redemption after mistakes. Navigating these conflicting emotions required a calm he hadn't always possessed, forcing him to assess not only his feelings, but also the long-term implications of any decision. Could reconciliation ever be possible without repeating past mistakes? Would his children's emotional well-being be jeopardized by reopening this chapter? The decision-making process became a careful analysis of boundaries and principles. He recognized that forgiveness did not require forgetting, nor did it require returning to the previous state of dependency. He had to weigh the stability and emotional safety of his children above all, ensuring that any action taken would not compromise the sanctuary he had built over the past 6 months. At the same time, he considered his own dignity, refusing to allow desperation or lingering love to cloud his judgment. In this delicate balance, he discovered a newfound clarity, the ability to confront emotional manipulation without succumbing to it, to listen without immediately responding, and to assert control over a situation that had once seemed uncontrollable. Ultimately, the encounter became a turning point, not only in terms of relationship dynamics, but also in his personal growth. It highlighted the importance of self-respect, the necessity of clear communication, and the power of measured response in the face of emotional upheaval. The return of his estranged wife was more than a plea. It was a test of boundaries, resilience, and emotional intelligence. Through this confrontation, he realized that true strength was not in impulsive reactions or blind forgiveness, but in the calm, deliberate evaluation of what was best for himself and his children, ensuring that the past informed but did not dictate the future. In the aftermath of betrayal and the tense confrontation that followed her return, he began to understand the true meaning of empowerment. It wasn't about revenge, nor was it about stubbornly clinging to pride. It was about reclaiming control over his own life and the future of his children. Empowerment came from recognizing that, despite the pain he had endured, he had grown stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The months alone had tested him in ways he had never anticipated, forcing him to discover reserves of patience, determination, and inner strength that had been dormant. He realized that the choices he made from this point onward would define not just his life, but also the emotional landscape of his family. He approached the situation with a renewed sense of clarity, instead of acting impulsively on emotion, whether through anger, grief, or even lingering love. He evaluated the situation carefully. His children's needs came first, and he understood that their stability and emotional safety could not be compromised. Empowerment meant making difficult decisions without fear of judgment, asserting boundaries firmly, and refusing to allow past betrayals to dictate his sense of self-worth. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of agency over his life, knowing that no one else could force him into a decision he was not ready or willing to make. At the same time, he discovered that empowerment was deeply tied to self-respect and dignity. He realized that forgiveness, if it were to happen, would need to be earned and not demanded. It was not a concession of weakness, but an acknowledgement of accountability and growth. By refusing to immediately reconcile simply because she asked, he demonstrated to himself and to his children that love and respect must be mutual and earned, not coerced or assumed. This mindset transformed his perspective on relationships entirely. He understood that his worth was not diminished by betrayal, and that his ability to set boundaries was a reflection of his strength, not his anger. Beyond the personal, he saw empowerment in the bond he had strengthened with his children. The months of single parenting had fostered deep trust and intimacy, creating a family dynamic built on resilience and honesty. He realized that his ability to provide emotional security for them, even in the absence of their mother, was a testament to his courage and determination. Empowerment, in this sense, was about creating a legacy of stability, teaching his children through example how to navigate adversity with dignity and strength. Ultimately, empowerment meant taking ownership of the future. It was the understanding that he could choose his path, whether it included reconciliation under strict boundaries, maintaining independence, or even moving forward without her entirely. It was the freedom to act deliberately rather than react emotionally, to prioritize love, stability, and respect above all else. Through the heartbreak, the struggle, and the confrontation, he emerged not as a victim of circumstance, but as a man who had reclaimed control of his life, strengthened the bonds with his children, and discovered an unshakable sense of self-worth that no betrayal could ever diminish.